If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Or more pressingly, if your podcast isn't in every podcast directory, can people listen to it? Let's explore. Welcome to Podcast Workflows, where you get daily tips to improve your process, grow your show, and maybe even make some money. Each week, I also do a daily dive into the process of the world's most successful podcasters and reveal their tools, processes, and systems to help you simplify the production of your own show and reclaim hours in your day. You can improve your own podcast production process by seeing how the pros do it. I'm your host, Joe Casabona, and today we're going to talk about your podcast being everywhere. When you launched your podcast, you likely knew to submit it to Apple Podcasts. You probably knew to submit it to Spotify. Heck, your podcast hosting company probably does that last one for you automatically. And it's true that those two cover a number of bases. Most small directories pull from Apple Podcasts, and between Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you're looking at least half of podcast listenership. But this doesn't cover all of your bases. You still need to submit to Amazon and Pocket Casts, Good Pods, and Podcast Index. There are lots of different podcast directories. Plus, there are lots of niche directories you want to be in. I just mentioned Good Pods, but there's also Podchaser. And you want your show to be on YouTube. YouTube is a driving force for growth in the podcasting space, and they are doubling down. They want to be the podcast source. So securing your spot by creating a channel for your show is super important, even if it's just audio. But why do you need to do this? Maybe you know only people who listen in Spotify. Maybe you know people who only listen in Apple Podcasts. But you want your show to be as accessible as possible, which means that you need to put it everywhere. I went to subscribe to a show I was really excited about, but they didn't submit to Pocket Casts. And so now I have to decide, do I want to use two different apps to listen because the podcast app I use doesn't have this show? I think if you're aiming for becoming part of someone's habit, you need to be where they listen. Tom Webster has been saying this for years now, since 2018, and he knows a thing or two about podcast listening habits. So you want to meet your potential audience where they are. That's how you drive growth. And if you're not sure what directories you need to be in, don't worry, I've got you covered. I have a free Notion template that I use for my podcast growth audit, where I check to make sure your show is in the top 20 podcasting directories. You can head over to podcastworkflows.com/audit to download that Notion template completely for free. Again, that's podcastworkflows.com/audit. But the real lesson here is people can't listen to you if you don't meet them where they are. So make sure your show is everywhere it can be. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to give me feedback on this episode, you can find me on X, formerly Twitter, at @JCasabona. Say hi on LinkedIn over at I'm Joe Casabona over there. And until next time, I can't wait to see what you make.